is the nature of this interview? I thought I could tell you.
Yeah, we are basically just looking for some background about your life in the service and your experiences there. We'll start with the basics, like when and where were you born. Another question we thought would be interesting to ask is, how your parents, or if you had any siblings, how they felt about you joining the service. What was the nature of you joining? A timeline of your experience, like when you went to basic training, when you actually, did you see combat, those kinds of things. So just the story of your
Just a little picture of an old GI.
Yeah. I missed that. No. Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's just get going.
All right, so if you want to just start off by telling us about when you were born and how old you were when you...
Can I put this away or
Yeah.
can I hold it?
It's your call.
Yeah, take a couple sips, Dad. We know you need your coffee.
All right. No, what do you want to know?
When you were born.
When you were born and where you were living when the war started and you joined the service.
My name is Tom Collins. I was born August 26, 1923 in Hartford, Connecticut. I grew up in Norwich, Connecticut. I enlisted in the Army when I was 18. I didn't shave until I was in the Army for over a year and a half. And during an inspection, some officer reached over and rubbed his hand against my cheek and said, "Oh, you son of a bitch."
Tell the whole story.
That's that?
Tell the whole story. That it was an inspection.
Which one?
That story.
Oh, well, it was a regular barracks inspection. And all the guys are lined up and all these grizzled old veterans were there and they came to this young kid. I looked a lot younger than I was. I looked about 15. And he looked at me. He finally rubbed his hand on my cheek. He said, "I'll be son of a bitch." I didn't shave. I didn't shave till I was in the Army 2 years.
So why did you enlist?
Why did I what?
Why did you enlist?
I was 18. The country needed me. I joined up.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any siblings that also enlisted? Who did you leave behind when you went on?
One sister.
One sister.
She was younger, and she stayed in Norwich.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were gone. No other siblings.
Which branch did you enter of service?
I was in the U.S. Army.
Okay.
They put me in the engineers. Why, I don't know. I was 18 and didn't know a thing about engineering.
So what is your most vivid memory of your time training?
My most vivid memory of my time in the Army? Probably on Okinawa, when they dropped the atomic bomb. And I was sitting there with my commanding officer and a couple of other guys. And the captain said, "Thomas." He always called me Thomas. He never called me by rank. He said, "I think the war is over."
And I think we're going to go home alive.
Oh, yeah. I guess we're going to go home alive. We were getting ready to invade Japan. And I didn't think I'd survive. But, yeah, I said, I think I'm going to go home alive. Yeah.
What did you do after that? Did you go into Japan?
Oh, I went into Japan, had a wonderful time in Japan. The people were wonderful there.
What did they say to you?
They what?
What did they say to you?
Well, during the first few days I was there was no communication in Japan. And the people, some of the people asked me, "You mean the war is over?"
Interesting.
And I said, "Yes."
Yeah. The planes.
No
The
more.
what?
Well, tell him, honey.
What did they ask you about the planes?
Oh, yeah. And one of the fellow asked me, you mean no more B-29s? They were scared to death of the B-29s. I would be too if I saw a couple of hundred fly over me dropping bombs.
Mm-mm. What about the story of the eating the can of whatever it was, Spam or you know that story we've heard?
You were trapped behind
Oh.
enemy lines for a while?
We were in New Guinea and we were trapped. And we didn't have anything for a few days. And they came by and one of the guys opened a can of Spam and gave it to me. And I thought it was delicious. I wouldn't eat it today.
One thing I've never heard is you've talked about Japan, but what were you guys doing in New Guinea and what was the other place you were?
Philippines.
The Philippines? Like, what were you guys sent there to do?
What was it like in the Philippines?
Well, what were you doing at the Philippines and New Guinea? What was your unit doing?
Well, I was in an engineering outfit.
Mm,
And our principal job was to lengthen airstrips.
mhm.
We flew in, lengthened airstrips so our planes could land because the Japanese planes didn't need as long an airstrip as we did.
Okay.
You gotta understand that I was a teenager. I didn't shave until I was in the Army for a year and a half. So I was not an important factor in this whole thing. It's just some guy taking up space. Tried not to do too much of it.
There were a lot of you doing that.
Yeah.
So you'd go in right behind the initial wave of
Oh, yeah.
infantry?
Were you guys under
It was
fire?
exciting.
while you were?
It was exciting doing that.
What were you asking, Philip?
While you guys were building these airstrips, were you getting attacked or what was going on the whole time?
Well, the reason we were building airstrip is the Japanese planes didn't take as much space as we did. So we would go in and lengthen the airstrips
Mhm.
so that our planes could land in there. We had all these very hot planes like the P-38s, the P-47s. And they had the little Zeros that could take off at 100 feet, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. It's hard for me to remember all of these things.
You're doing a good job though, Dad.
So you enlisted when you were 18 and you went through training, and then when you shipped out, where did you go first?
When he got out of the Army,
Yeah, or when you
No, go.
yeah, when you got out of
After
basic training,
Yeah.
where did you go after basic?
we headed for Australia, or New Zealand, I should say, and then Australia. And those were luxury days. And then we went to New Guinea. And I went from living in a nice room in Australia to a pup tent in the jungle.
Wow.
It was quite an adjustment.
How many people were in your tent?
I was just one.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty small. It was the size of this table right here. You didn't get two people in there.
Unless it was cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we went to New Guinea. And you gotta remember, I was just a teenager. I was at the bottom of the totem pole. And actually the men sort of looked out for me. Because most of the guys I were in the middle 20s, they were grizzled old veterans. I didn't shave. I can remember once when some captain came by and looked at my full field pack and said, "Collins, there's no razor in a full field pack." I said, "I don't, Captain, I don't shave." And he went like that and he rubbed my cheek. "I'll be a son of a bitch."
Did you have any close friends that were in your unit?
Well, when you're overseas in combat, they're all your close friends. But anybody I hung around with and chummed with, I don't call there anybody special. I just liked everybody. Yeah.
What about William Williams and Peter Peters and those guys?
Oh, I was in the Army with one guy named Peter Peters and the other guy named William Williams.
What about the other two guys?
Oh, yeah.
Which ones were they?
William Peters and Peter Williams.
Oh yeah, William Peters, Peter Williams, William Williams, and Peter Peters. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I have to stop and think. I'm getting old, I can't remember anymore. Yeah.
So where did you go after New Guinea? What other islands were you on?
From New Guinea, I went to Leyte in the Philippines, which is practically civilized.
Was there fighting going on there?
Oh, yes, there's a lot of fighting. But the Japanese didn't look us long. We drove them out of the Philippines pretty quickly. And most of my time in the Philippines was spent relaxing. We didn't have much to do. So I'd go into Manila. I'd go to, well, I wasn't always up there in Luzon. I was mostly down in Mindanao, but you'll have to forgive my memory. I'm 98 years old. I can't remember all these things quite so well as I used to.
You're remembering a lot. You're remembering a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to forget.
Yeah. I bet.
Remember, I was only 18 when I
I
started.
know. Those are things that stick with you.
Oh, yeah.
And after the Philippines, what did you do?
In the Philippines,
After the Philippines.
we went to Okinawa.
Mhm.
And Okinawa is a big barren hunk of land. And our job was to lengthen the airstrip so our planes could take off from there and bomb Japan.
So there was still a lot of fighting going on there too, right?
The Japanese never quit. They might have left a few in foxholes, and those in the foxholes would sneak out at night and try to stab the Americans.
Mm.
You gotta give the Japanese credit. They were fighters. And I loved being in Japan. Really, the people were wonderful. The war was over, of course. And they were very happy. Happy to have us there as guests, not conquering soldiers. But I was just a kid, you know. I matured late in life. I went to the Army when I was 18, but it was more like I was 15. I didn't shave till I'd been in the Army a couple of years. Ask me some more questions.
Well, what was the hardest part of military life that you had to adapt to?
The hardest part of military? There was none. I adapted very quickly. I enjoyed military life.
Why do you think that was?
Well, it was an improvement over my life before. I was orphaned when I was a little kid, and I went to live with relatives who didn't want me and made it known that they didn't want me. And so I enlisted when I was 18, mainly to get away from them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got out of the Army and it was a different world. Then I met Paul's mother. And that was a big day. She was a wonderful girl. She's not with us anymore, but She made me happy for 50 years.
65.
More you, yeah.
What's that?
65.
65
65
years.
years.
Together, yep.
You gotta forgive my memory, I'm getting mixed up.
How was so if you enlisted to get away from the family and life was better, how was your life immediately after? Did you come back and
I can't hear.
how was after the army, like the first year you got
After I
out?
left the army,
Yep. Was it better
well,
than
yeah, I
before
went
you
right
left?
to college.
Mhm.
And I eventually graduated from Wesleyan, and then I went to law school and started practicing. And I practiced right up until how long ago?
A few years ago.
Yeah, I was
Maybe
probably
5 years ago.
75 or
You were 90. You were 90.
90 when
Still
I
practicing,
Still practicing.
and driving.
I loved every minute of it.
Do you want to explain the medals over there?
I was never a big hero. I was in the engineers. Most of those medals are by accident, or they gave to everybody. Just for being there, getting shot at, lying in a foxhole at night, and the bombs exploding around us.
Slightly different than my childhood.
Yeah. It was a different world. I hope you guys never get to know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dad, what was it like when you came back? How did the public react to you? Did they treat you kind of as someone who was a hero, who had been over there, or was not much said?
Well, it's hard to say because I went to college
Yeah.
and everybody in my class was an ex-GI,
Oh,
so we had a lot in common.
yeah. Interesting.
Even at Wesleyan?
I don't recall anybody ever treating me badly when I came back. I know some of my friends said they had experience where people said, another GI, but I never experienced any of that. You gotta understand, when I went in the army, I didn't shave. I was 18, I looked about 14. In fact, my nickname in the army was the Kid.
Oh, yeah? They called you the kid?
The Kid. Yeah. Did I tell you about the time we had an inspection?
Yeah, 5.
It's all
What else
interesting.
should I tell them?
What else?
Those were all the
Questions.
stories I've heard.
So what was, when you got over there, what surprised you, or how was life different over there
How was it different?
when you were in the service? Yeah.
Well, New Zealand and Australia were wonderful. They were just like the United States. But when we got to New Guinea, it was a different story. I got off this luxury liner and went into the jungle, and they gave me a pup tent and said, "That's yours." The pup tent was about the size of this little table there, and I slithered into it. That was my bunk for a while.
What were you doing on New Guinea? After the airport, the landing strips were finished.
And we didn't have much to do.
Daily life, you just hung around and did nothing?
Most of them did nothing and waited for the invasion of the Philippines. In the Army, it's hurry up and wait. There's a lot of sitting around, nothing to do. And then all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom.
Did they give you any warning that you were about to leave?
Oh no. That's the last thing in the world you ever did was tell you anything.
So just one day somebody showed up and said, "Pack up, we're going.
That's
We're
right.
getting on a ship." Jeez.
What
And
unit?
they
were you
didn't tell
guys-
us where they were going.
What unit were you guys attached to when you went over?
I get here.
What unit were you attached to when you went over? Was it Marines? Was it Army? Who were the infantry guys that you guys were with?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm old and going deaf.
When you went to the Philippines, you said that the infantry would take the islands in front of you. Do you know what unit that was that you were with?
I was in the Army Engineers.
Now, who were you attached to? There was a unit that invaded the Philippines in front of you. Were those Army infantry?
Oh, those were infantry, yeah.
You don't know what unit though?
No,
What division
they
or?
never told us anything. We were just told to go in and lengthen the airstrip.
What was the number of your unit?
The 872nd Airborne Engineers.
Okay.
Airborne because we traveled by plane. And we had little dinky toy tractors that could get out of plane.
You never had to jump out of a plane though.
I never jumped out of a plane, no. I thought a couple times I was going to have to. But we didn't have to.
Why, you thought the plane was going down?
Yeah.
Was it hit by anti-aircraft or it was mechanical?
Hit by anti-aircraft.
Really?
But we managed to land,
Oh my
as you
gosh.
can see.
Do you remember when that was? When that happened?
Oh, yeah.
Could you tell a little more about when your plane was hit by an aircraft?
I think it was in New Guinea. That's a long time ago and I've forgotten. Yeah. I can tell you one thing. I was one of the most wonderful bunch of guys you could ever want to meet. I was about the only one in my outfit who wasn't a draftee. I joined. And sometimes some of the fellows would look at me and say, what's wrong with him? He enlisted. But I loved the Army. And I was 18 years old, what the heck.
You went in as a buck private?
I went as a buck private, yeah.
And what promotions did you get along the way to that?
Where was it?
The medals?
Yeah. Oh, here it is, right, yeah. Those are medals they gave me for bravery. I wasn't brave. I didn't even know what those medals are.
Philip probably
This
knows.
is the symbol of the Corps of Engineers. Why they put me in the engineers, I don't know. I went in when I was 18.
They needed.
I didn't know how to add up figures, let alone build buildings.
Well, how did you go from a buck private to whatever that rank is? What rank is that, do you know?
Corporal.
Corporal, so you got a promotion at some point? How did you find out about that? Did somebody come up and tell you?
My CO said, Collins, you're a corporal.
So then it was just you and Douglas MacArthur at that point, the high-ranking guys.
I never met Dugout Doug, no.
Dugout Doug? So,
We always refer to him as Dugout Doug.
not to his face.
I never met him.
Why'd you call him Dugout Doug?
I met Eisenhower,
Did you?
and you know what? He treated me as though I were the president. He grabbed my hand and shook it.
When was that? When he was president?
In Hartford, Connecticut. It was in the middle of Bushnell Park. And he saw me and he walked over. He approached me. I would never have dared to approach him. I'd have been shot. You know, somebody cops running around with submachine guns in Hartford. Because already they had a lot of shootings. So they didn't want him to get shot in Hartford.
Was he campaigning for president?
Oh, he was president, I think.
He was already president?
You know, I'm getting up to close to 100. I can't remember everything quite perfectly
You're
anymore.
doing fine.
I try.
Do you remember your CO? When you were over, you said your CO told you that you were corporal. Do you remember what your CO was like?
My CO was named Walter T. Weathers, and he was from somewhere backwoods of Mississippi. And he was a yawl sort of speaker. I can remember once he came to me and said, "Tom, you all seen my Jeep?"
What rank was he, a captain?
Lieutenant or captain, something like that.
Was he a good CO? Was he a good CO? Was he good to you and the other men?
He was okay. Our colonel was an ace. He was a really good guy.
Do you remember
Yeah.
his name?
Over here.
Do you remember his name?
You know what?
The colonel, do you remember his name?
Remember his name? Which one?
The colonel.
Henley.
What did a colonel command? Was he in charge of a regiment or a company or a
Battalion
battalion? Okay.
of about 800 men. And with 4 companies, each of about 200 men. And I was one of the youngest of the outfit.
So the battalion, what was it, 872nd? Was that a
The
battalion?
872nd Airborne Engineers.
But that's a battalion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can remember our commanding officer named Henley. Can't remember his first name. And then he was deaf. We referred to him as Deafy.
Oh.
And
Subtle.
the deafness to come out of that, he was followed by his assistant, Johnny D. Mullinax. He was a nice guy. He looked like a wrestler, huge man.
Oh.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Do you ever drive tractors or bulldozers or anything when you were working on the airstrips?
Oh, of course. That's what you do. You see, we liked the aircraft because the Japanese planes could land on the short runways, airstrips, and we lengthened them so our planes could land on them.
Can you
And when we
explain?
weren't lengthening airstrips, we were playing cards.
Can you explain the process of the airstrip? Did y'all have to bring in cement, or what did y'all actually do when you were building an
Well,
airstrip?
we just had to plow jungle out of the way and then lengthen the airstrips so our planes could land.
Okay.
How about the time you were watching a movie? I think it was in New Guinea and you started getting bombed.
Well, how about
Remember that?
more than once?
Oh, really? You'd string a bed sheet up between trees.
Sorry?
You'd string a bed sheet up
Bed sheet?
to watch the movie
To
on,
make
to
a
make the
screen.
screen for the movie.
Oh, we spread a bed sheet between 2 coconut trees and shined the movie on there. We saw a lot of movies.
But then the Japanese would bomb you during the movie and you'd curse them.
We'd turn off the camera and swear and shake our fists at the Japanese planes and duck the bombs.
Jump in a foxhole.
You know, we didn't have many foxholes. But we get flat on the ground, and when it sounded all clear, we'd go back to watching the movie as though nothing had happened.
Do you remember some of the movies you watched? Do you remember the movies you watched?
Most of them were musical comedies. Betty Grable, people like that.
Probably not a lot of war movies.
Right.
Not a lot of war movies you watched, huh? You were living it.
Oh, yeah, we saw war movies. Oh, what was that movie with Van Johnson that was so famous? A war movie.
I can look it up.
As I get older, I'm a good forgetter.
You're doing great, Dad. War movie.
Yeah,
How did you get home from Japan? By plane or by ship?
plane,
Where did you fly into?
Portland, Oregon.
And then how did you get back to Norwich?
Well, I stayed in Portland for a while, and then I got back to Norwich by train.
All across the country by train?
That must have been an experience. Did you stay in touch with the men from your unit when you got home?
What did they do with it?
Did you stay in touch with the men from your unit when you got home?
Norwich.
Right. Did you stay in touch with everybody from the war though after you got home and went to college? Did you still talk to people, keep up friendships? No.
Well, I went to college in Middletown, Wesleyan University.
I don't think he can hear you.
Oh.
But then later on, I went to law school in Hartford.
Dad,
Right.
Your buddies.
did you
from the
stay
war.
in touch with anybody from your army units after the war?
No,
Okay.
There you go.
I wrote to one or two, but they never answered. But it never bothered me. I was too busy in college, having a good time, studying hard. Wesleyan was a great school.
Did you ever think about staying in the Army? After the war?
When I was married, and I think my wife would have objected. She probably would have shot me. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Dad, Van Johnson movies. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, A Guy Named Joe, and The Human Comedy were all war movies.
They were all after
That
the
sounds-
war.
Oh, those were after the war?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. You're testing my memory. We're going back a long way.
It's all good.
Yes, they're good. Yeah. So how did your military experiences affect the rest of your life? Like, what are the biggest lessons you took from being in the service?
Well, I immediately enrolled in college. I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And when I graduated from college, I went to law school, and I've been practicing for, what, 50, 60 years?
But did your military experience help you in law school or your practice?
Oh, it must have. I can't tell you exactly how much, but I matured. I was just a kid when I went in the service. I didn't shave. What's the matter?
That's okay.
That was a lot of information you remembered.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. That was very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other questions?
I don't know, it's probably good.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
That's what.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I enjoyed Army life.
This is kind of a cool question, but what message would you like to leave for future generations who listen to this interview? Is there anything that you'd like people to know?
Oh, just love each other.
That's nice.
Yeah. I got out of the army and then I met Paul's mother. I remember I saw her walking by and I went, "Ugh." And I said, I'm gonna marry that girl. And I did.
Not too long
about
after.
5 months later.
Yeah.
Where were you working?
At a life insurance company.
And she walked by your desk?
She walked by my desk, yeah.
And didn't somebody say, what if she has a boyfriend?
Yeah. And I said something like, well, I'd have to shoot him. Something like that. But I didn't have to.
Yeah.
That's good.
I met her and we were married 5 months later. And how long were we married? About 55 years?
65.
65. But then she passed away. Yes. Well, I hope you have as good a marriage as I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were lucky. And we had 2 wonderful kids.
Well, one.
Yeah, but she's not here.
Oh,
That's quick.
oh yeah.
I can keep up with you.
You can, no doubt.
Now, who are you interviewing for?
So we work on the Veterans History Project at, there's a,
Oh,
what would you call it, a chapter of it?
Yeah.
at
you're
Central?
talking about all the old veterans of World War II?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Every war.
Everywhere.
It'll, yeah.
That's great.
Your story will get saved at the Library of Congress.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they're all cooperative with you.
You are our first that we've interviewed, and you've been very cooperative, so thank you.
Well, whatever you want, just ask me questions.
The Library of Congress, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a great project.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right.
Okay. It's a wrap.